my heart. I'm feeling this love, feeling this love. I'm feeling this love in my heart. And the love that I'm feeling just keeps healing and healing. I'm feeling this love in my heart. I'm living this love that I am. I'm living this love that I am. I'm living this love. I'm living this love. I'm living this love that I am. And this love that I'm living just keeps giving and giving. I'm living this love that I am. We're sending God's love to the world. We're sending God's love to the world. We're sending God's love, sending God's love. We're sending God's love to the world. And this love that we're sending is a love that's never ending. We're sending God's love to the world. I'm sending my love to the world. I'm sending my love to the world. I'm sending my love, sending my love. I'm sending my love to the world. I'm sending my love to the world. I'm sending my love to the world.
Renewal of your mind. This is a theme that has kind of carried the whole unity movement for many years. This idea of renewing the mind. It is a focus more on what's going on inside of us rather than what's going on in the world, because we understand that as we look at the world, we look at it through the lens of our own consciousness. And so when that is clear, we see most clearly. We can respond to what we are seeing, and at this phase, I have to admit that it's a very difficult thing not to do sometimes. I don't want to see my country torn in half, and I don't want to see it burned down, and that bothers me when I see these things. But I have to step back, and I have to remember there's a bigger picture. There's a bigger story unfolding. This is just one phase of it. I don't know anyone that would think this was a good thing in terms of the violence and all of the destruction that people are in some name of something performing. I don't get it. But we've seen some pretty horrific things through history. I was watching a program the other night about the Cathars. It was a Christian sect that the Catholic Church did not approve of, and so they systematically exterminated thousands of people that they did not agree with. And so that's just one incident that probably most of you have never heard of, but it happens all through history, and we see that's part of human nature. And I don't think we're getting any better at it. I don't think we're getting beyond that. That's the hope of most people, I think, is that we'll evolve to the point where we don't do this kind of thing to each other. these kinds of things, but we're still doing it. It's not that much different than it was in Jesus' time or any other time. So I have a feeling that it's that when Jesus said the poor will be with you always, I think the violent will be with you always, the ignorant will be with you always, those who want what you have will be with you always. So we are in this world of appearances, and we have to take another approach sometimes to make it make sense. And Paul actually was the target of, he was the perpetrator of destruction against Christians in his early career, and then he was the target later on in his life. And so he knew both sides of that, but he had a renewal of mind, he had a change of heart, and that caused him to change his whole approach to what he thought was important in life. So this is not a theoretical thing that I want to throw out today. It's an actual practice that we can engage in, and we can see things from a perspective that will help us deal with whatever it is we're going through. And Paul wrote this in his letter to the Romans that's been quoted many times by Unity people and other denominations, of course. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that you may prove what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. So he's saying that to not be conformed to this world, and I take that as meaning don't look out at what's going on out here and react to it or allow yourself to go down to that level, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. And he's not saying put your head in the sand. Paul was an activist. He was a Christian activist, when you really put it in perspective. And he was constantly in danger and just was one of the most adamant, fervent believers in what he was teaching. Not too many people like him. And many people attribute the whole, basically the founding of the Christian church, or the perpetuation, getting it off the ground. They attribute that much of that to Paul. Paul opened it up to beyond the Jewish community. You know, all the early Christians were Jews. They weren't called Christians, they were called followers of the way. But he opened it up to the pagans, to the, what's the other word that we use? Anyway, the non-Jew. And he was Gentile, yeah. I don't use that word every day, but, you know, that's what it means, the non-Jews. And that was quite a controversy. You know, it's like when we pass laws to let women vote, or blacks. You know, whenever we do something major different. And Paul, I think, had a pretty good insight into things. But the church adopted many ideas that don't really work that well. And the Christian church, you know, I was reading about the soul and about the whole idea of salvation, what that means, because I kind of brush up on that sometimes just to make sure I still understand it. So the Christian theology is that we are born in sin. So everybody needs to be saved, everyone. And it's not only that, but, you know, all of our misdeeds, the things that we do to other people, and all the sins we commit. There's a whole list of sins that you can commit to earn a place in hell. But we are all in need of salvation, and the Christian church says we are the only way you'll get it. We are the gate. And they don't always openly say that all other religions are wrong. But the implication is there that Jesus Christ is the way. And that's a pretty interesting problem. Because in one sense, the church inflicts the disease and they offer the cure. You're born in sin. Okay, you've got the disease. That's a religious teaching. Is it a truth? I don't think so. You can think what you want about it. Most of us have been exposed to that idea. And some that would hear me say this would say I was going straight to hell for saying it. But it's a whole system of thought that you have to buy into it before you believe in the whole idea of salvation. I happen to believe that we're already saved, that every one of us is just fine. And the church would say, well, then what's the point of having church? If we're not in the business of saving souls, what are we in the business of doing? And I think we're in the business of educating souls. We're in the business of offering ideas that help set people free. And freedom has been measured by how well you accept the plan of salvation that's offered to you. You accept it and you're free. That's why the fundamentalist praises Jesus in tears. They're so relieved that they're going to heaven. They've been saved. But they still may live a difficult life. They still may live a life they don't get. They still may live a life that makes no sense. And many do and think it will make sense someday when I'm gone. I just need to pass this test and get home. So we can live by that type of thinking that we are under the burden of having been born in sin. We've all got the black mark, and we're in need of salvation. I was baptized, I was immersed, fully immersed, so I'm okay. But the only thing I felt was joy that it was over. Going up in front of all the people in front of the church, they had a hot tub in the front, and we went up and were immersed. And there's a sense of being put in the water and lifted out. The symbolic side of this is great because it symbolizes the renewal of the mind. You're being put in as one thing, a sinner, and you're being brought out as one who is saved. So the whole idea of baptism, the concept is great. It's true. But there's no power in that water. There's no power in the minister that puts you under and pulls you out. It's a symbol. It is the symbol of being born of the flesh. One who is born of the flesh goes in and is brought out one who is born of the Spirit. It's a renewal of mind. That's what it's about. But it's become this thing, have you been baptized? Have you been saved? Have you gone up in front of a congregation and confessed your sins and now you're saved? That has nothing to do with the renewal of the mind. But if you think it does, then you will experience a joy, a momentary joy at least. And that's what I think somewhat drives so much of religion is emotionalism. I am so happy that I'm saved from eternal sin, eternal damnation. I remember the day I accepted Jesus. And it goes down as an emotional moment. But is there an actual renewal of the mind? Is there an actual revelation that I am a spiritual being? I inhabit this body, but this body is not me. I'm something more. I am an eternal expression of God that is free of sin, free of limitation, free of missing the mark of divinity. And I have always been that way. part of me has strayed way out. The prodigal son, going out into the far country, totally bought into the material aspect of life. But the parable says, you come back. That's one thing the Catholic Church does that is kind of, I learned that is kind of interesting, that I would always ask, if God is love, how can God condemn you to hell? And the church says he doesn't. That's your choice. God has given the sacrifice, has given the way in, but you're choosing not to take it. So it's your problem. It's your choice, not God's. God's not doing this to you. That's how they get out of that one. So anyway, we go through all this stuff, and a lot of us have to throw off our religious baggage, and it is baggage, and it doesn't work. This whole thing around Jesus doesn't work. Jesus is Savior. Jesus is the only begotten Son of God. He didn't teach that. He taught us to pray to our Father, to go to our Father, our source. He didn't teach that he was special. He was of a different species. Why else would he say, our Father, who art in heaven? Included all of us. Why do you call me good, he said. There's only one that's good, and that's God. Let's turn our attention there. So what does it mean to be conformed to this world? How do we go about renewing our mind? And what practical reason do we have for even considering such questions? So we're all conformed to this world. We've all bought into it. We all have bodies. We all have needs. We have 99% of our activities are, just think about what you do all day long and what you think about. Where your energy is. It's generally centered around the body. So we've all conformed to the world. He's saying, let's take another look at this. And I don't think Paul was a preacher in the sense of do it or else. It's kind of an invitation to think of yourself in a different way. So how do we go about renewing our mind? That's we just had a brief exercise there in meditation, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. What practical reason do we have for even considering such questions? And I think let's start with the last question first. Many people carry the feeling that there must be more to life than they are experiencing. Regardless of what they achieve or how many things they accumulate, the feeling persists. Some describe it as a sense of hollowness at the very core. I understand that feeling, very familiar with it. And in my years of talking to people in ministry and through counseling and so on, spiritual counseling, I'm not alone. People are driven by a feeling of lack. And I'm not going to say all people because I don't know, but I'm saying people in general are driven by a feeling of lack. Something's missing. And so we go about trying to accumulate and achieve something that will fill that void. Something that will touch that sense and make me feel satisfied. And we will go out and do things, we'll accomplish things, and we will have feelings of satisfaction and fulfillment for a time. But that never lasts. And that's what Jesus was talking about, I believe, the woman at the well. When he said the water that you're drawing from that well, you'll drink it, but you'll thirst again. The water that I give will quench your thirst. It wells up as eternal life. And he had no water with him. What he was talking about is what I'm saying, what I'm teaching. There's another way. That the water we draw from the well, that is all of the things we accomplish and the things we accumulate and, all the places we live and the ways we identify ourselves and advance ourselves and so forth. It doesn't matter what we achieve. It's like drawing a pail of water from that well, and pretty soon it'll be empty and you'll be thirsty again, and it doesn't satisfy. It doesn't mean we don't do it. He didn't tell the woman not to come back to the well because the woman had a body, and the body needs water. We have a bird bath out in our backyard, and I keep that thing full, but I notice it's not just birds that show up. There's honeybees and there's all kinds of things that show up because we all need water, because we all have bodies. So we're not denying that. We're not pretending like that's something that we are to deny and get rid of. Because I pointed out before, and I like this thought, is why would I come here if my number one spiritual goal is to get rid of this, to get rid of all my attachment to the thing I came for? I think what the spiritual teaching is intended to do is help me enjoy this time, this period that I'm in the body. Help me enjoy it by remembering what is true about me, that I am a spiritual being in a body temporarily. I'm not the body. So I think it's interesting that there's a sense in the spiritual community that we're going to reach a point where none of the physical means anything. Well, just shoot yourself. Get it over with. Get on. Get rid of the body. If your goal is to get so illumined that the body means nothing, then why would you drag it around? Doesn't make any sense. The point of our spiritual education is to be in this body and enjoy this life, to get the most out of it, to be in this world but not of it, to not be conformed to this world but to be renewed by the renewal, transformed by the renewal of our mind. So I think probably most of you, and I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands, but are familiar with that kind of annoying, something's missing feeling. And it doesn't matter what we achieve. Things are exciting. I like achievement like anybody else. But it's not always fulfilling. Permanently, I should say, not permanently quenching our thirst. So what we are seeking is not material. And that's a difficult thing to talk about. It's not difficult to talk about it. It's difficult to understand it. I'm not really seeking material things. I'm seeking what I think they will give me. And what I think they will give me is of the spiritual dimension. That's what I'm looking for. I'm trying to make the material do the job of the spiritual. What we are seeking is not material but spiritual. This change of understanding represents a change in one's worldview. We don't turn our backs on the material side of life, but we bring it into proper perspective when we commit to a deeper experience of our spiritual core. So it's a matter of the more we experience ourselves in the quiet, that is our spiritual essence, the more the material makes sense. So I can say, well, if I could just write another book, I'd be happy. As if 8 isn't enough. If 8 books don't make me happy, I doubt if writing another book is going to make me happy. That's how we think. Okay, I just didn't say exactly what I want to say, so if I get that out, but it doesn't work that way. The way it works is if you want to write. Enjoy the process. Enjoy putting your thoughts on paper or on computer. Enjoy that process. And do it for the sake of the process. Not to try to draw something out of it that will make you feel like you're a more whole person. Because it'll never work. It just doesn't work. So we don't turn our backs on that. I think I came here to do things like write books. I can't write a book without a body. Don't need to in the first place. But there are things that we do here that we can only do because we have a body, or we need the body to do them. And why not enjoy what we're doing? Why not make this a journey, an adventure? Let's see, did I miss one here? No. Okay, so Jesus really gave the steps here, and what I would do is change what he says from prayer to meditation. When you pray, when you meditate, this section makes more sense when you think about going into quiet. He says, when you pray, go into your room. When you meditate, go into your room. What's this mean? What is your room? When you think about this, it's not a room, a place, but more than likely you'll have a place where you won't be disturbed and you can go to your room in that room. You go to a place where you won't be disturbed so you can turn within. So you can open your mind to this interactivity, this eternal life that is welling up in you all the time, this energy. It's a very subtle force, and we don't see it, we don't experience it when we're so wrapped up in the world. So he says, when you meditate, when you pray, go into your room, shut the door. What is the door? The door is the senses. It's the eyes, the ears mainly. And that is, you don't have to cover up your eyes and cover up your ears. He's saying all the information that you've received that comes in through the eyes and the ears, let it go. Turn your attention away from that. You know what happens when you first close your eyes? You're trying to meditate. Is the door opens wide. All the thoughts, all the feelings of everything that happened throughout the day start bombarding you. He's just saying, learn how to shut the door. It takes practice. Learn how to do this. Pray to your Father who is in secret. This is a shifting of your attention from the outer to this inner place, and you've got to find that. There is a center in each of us. It's the core of our being, and it's active. And in truth, it is the source of your discontentment. The reason you're unhappy, the reason you feel that hollowness, is because this source, this wholeness, is welling up in you saying, you're not on the right track here. You're looking for me in the wrong place. I've said that if you've ever wondered if you heard the voice of God, you have, and that's it. Often how it begins is dissatisfaction. And we start looking at that, we start saying, why did I just accomplish the biggest thing in my life? And I celebrated and I was happy for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever. And now it just seemed like, well, that's that. Why don't I feel that sense of lasting satisfaction? So this pray to your Father who's in secret, it's turn your attention to this inner source. It's not a God up in the sky. You and I are projections of this. We are rising up out of this infinite source of energy, intelligence. But we are so rarely in touch with it. Then he says, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. How are you rewarded? How are we rewarded? We're rewarded by realizing as we go through our life, you look around, there's this material thing all around you. But you begin to realize there's a whole other dimension. And we live in it all the time. And it's pressing in upon us and through us. And we become aware of that. And as we watch life take place in the three-dimensional world, we think, that's not it. That's not reality. That is a reflection. That is a level of expression. But I have access to God, to the infinite. And this awareness begins to reward us with a broader view in whatever we're doing. And I guarantee you, if you take a broader view into any situation that you're involved in, you'll see through it. When you seek advice from someone and they tell you, I called somebody this week and asked them for some advice. And I got through talking to them and I felt better because my world had been expanded. I hadn't thought about what they said. So like you look at a problem in life and you don't know what to do because you are smaller than that problem in your mind. But just seeking the advice of someone else who opens that door just a little bit can change the way you think of that whole situation. So that's what it is. We're exposing ourselves to the Father, to this inner source, and the reward is that our minds are opened to a much greater degree, and we see life in a very different way. And we stop struggling so hard to change the world and start becoming more interested. What more could I experience by going to the Father or going to my source, whatever you want to call it? I'm not going to meditate because Reverend Doug told me to. I'm going to meditate because I want to. I want to know more about this experience. And that's when you have crossed a line. You do it not because you're told you need to do it. You do it because you understand why. That is getting the value. Your value has changed. Before you would say, I put my value in what I can do to change the situation. I'm going to go out and fight, and I'm going to riot, I'm going to do whatever I need to do. Your values change when you say, I don't need to change the world, when you grasp who you are at the deepest level. You can look out at the world, be in the world, but not of it. So that's the reward. Your experience expands right where you're standing. As we gradually bring our forces to our spiritual side, we begin to find a natural balance between soul and body. And that's, I think, an important statement, a natural balance between soul and body. We welcome a welcome transformation produced by the renewal of our mind. The will of God is greater expression of freedom through us, and that's what I'm talking about, this feeling that there's this other universe, this other level that is present. I'm just not aware of it. So when I become aware of it, I'm rewarded with that awareness. Okay? It's a pretty simple idea, but you've got to practice it. And that's what makes all the difference in the world. All right. Thanks for coming out. Looks like there's more of us all the time, and we're going to beat this thing. Thanks for coming out.
You've been watching a talk presented by Reverend Doug Bottorff at Independent Unity here in beautiful Grand Junction, Colorado. We would like to thank everyone who joined us here today, as well as those of you who joined us online. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to our channel, and be sure to share it with those you think who might benefit from this message. If this brought value to your life, please consider donating to us on PayPal. Thanks again for watching.